Okay, here we go. Greetings and salutations, everyone. Thank you for coming to the first general meeting of 2023. We have quite a show in store for you. We have quite the agenda tonight. And we can thank our Vice President, Frank Kane, for an amazing get tonight. We have TIM RUSS of Star Trek. We have SHARIFE talking about the science of Artemis. We have Barbara Harris talking about the variable star of the month. And then we have, of course, as always, the highlight of our meetings, the Astrophoto Showcase. So exciting to announce, our observing director, Derek Demeter, has helped arrange our Geneva Dark Sky Observing Nights. You have some dates there. Go ahead and save them on your calendar. We do have some backup dates as well in case of a weather cancellation. So go ahead and mark those down and hope to see you guys all out there. Our next in-person general meeting is going to be March 18th. And we are also working on seeing if we can get out to Cheapland or a new observing location called the Triple N Ranch. And if anyone is interested in knowing more about what's going on, contact our observing director, Derek. Welcome, Chris Hunt. We have a new lunar scope officer. And if any member is interested in borrowing one of our lunar scopes, go ahead and contact him. His email is listed there. And Chris and the rest of us will be more than happy to help you find a scope that will work for you, as well as help you learn how to use the scope at one of our events. As you see, we also have openings available for social media, publicity, and scientific activity chairs. Please contact me, Tricia, at presidentcfis.org if interested. Okay, I'm going to hand it over to our Vice President, Frank Kane, to introduce our main speaker, TIM RUSS. Thank you, Frank.
Yes, hello, let's do this. So, yeah, you probably know TIM RUSS mostly as Tuvok from Star Trek Voyager. He's got a long list of other accomplishments, though, including being a very talented musician. And well, also, he's been doing some work with the Planetary Society here, too. So I think this little skit from the Planetary Society is a pretty good introduction. Let's roll this here. The setup here is that Robert Picardo, who played the holographic doctor on Voyager, is visiting the Griffith Observatory at Los Angeles and runs into somebody here. So let's watch.
Here. Can I have a look through the historic Zeiss telescope?
Absolutely. In fact, a friend of yours is looking through it right now.
You're kidding. Oh my God, it's unbelievable. It's TIM RUSS, my buddy from Star Trek. I mean, I heard that he was an incredibly passionate amateur astronomer, but it's amazing. Hey, Tim. Good to see you.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. I was just in the...
Tim, it's me. It's Bob Picardo.
Bob Picardo.
Star Trek, Voyager.
Oh, you were...
157 hours of television.
You were actually on that show as...
No, I mean, I was on all the time.
All the time? Oh, you were?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Here is a picture of the Star Trek Voyager cast,
Right.
and that's you. And then, does this person look familiar?
Oh, yes, the bald guy that was in there. I recognize
Right.
you
I was
now.
the holographic doctor, the computer-generated doctor. It was
Right.
a very popular character.
Did you carry this around everywhere you go? Would you like me to sign it for you?
No, I don't want to sign it.
Oh,
Let's talk about other things.
Yes, okay, all right.
You are a passionate amateur astronomer.
Yes.
And I know you're looking through the Zeiss now, but do you have your own scopes?
Yes, I have what is called a 5-inch Maksudov Cassegrain, yes.
Oh, cool. Could we go look through that?
Totally.
I'll follow you.
Yeah.
All right, since you don't remember who I am. When Mr. Griffith looked through the telescope at Mount Wilson Observatory before he built this, he said if all of mankind could look through this telescope, it would change the world.
I have to agree with him 100%. It is definitely an experience. All the secrets to me, in my opinion, are out there, and they're out there to be discovered. That great big white thing up there, Bob, is the moon.
All right.
There you go.
This is your scope.
That's one of them, yeah.
Oh my God. Oh, it's so beautiful. It looks a little bit like my complexion when I was 15.
All right. So as you can see, TIM RUSS is a legit amateur astronomer, and Yeah, let's kick it off. So let's hand it off and welcome Tim Russ. Let's stop sharing.
All right. How are you?
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Tim.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Yeah, so some quick questions here. When did you get your start in astronomy? When did the bug hit you?
Oh, it was at least 35 years ago that I was. I just thought I would pursue this hobby, firsthand by purchasing a small wide field telescope at the time, and take it out to I don't know, relatively dark skies outside of Los Angeles, as dark as I could find them, and start to learn the night sky, all the constellations and things like that on my own. And I just started doing it, and it was great. It was a very exciting, very cool thing. I really enjoyed it, and it just kept going from there.
So that actually predates your time on Star Trek Voyager. So you were
yeah.
into astronomy before Star Trek became a part of your life, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Being on Trek was just a coincidence that I happened to get on a sci-fi show,
Yeah.
Traveling through space. But I was definitely interested in space science long before that.
Right. Now, we saw that 5-inch Mac Cassegrain in that little clip there, but I know you have other gear. What else is in your arsenal these days?
I've got a short tube refractor for looking at the sun, because I have an H-alpha filter that I use for that.
Cool.
I've got an 8-inch Schmidt Cassegrain, similar to the one you just saw, but it's 8 inches diameter. I've got a 10-inch Dobsonian, and I've got a brand new, it's a unistellar imaging telescope, which is probably the peak of the number of scopes that I've got. That's one of my favorites. I still need the optical telescopes for certain things, but the unistellar allows me to reach out and see dark sky objects within the city limits, and that's really an advantage. So.
Really? Wow. Yeah, I was thinking that, within the city, you'd be kind of limited to planets and the moon and things like that, but that unistellar is actually able to punch through the light pollution in LA?
It absolutely is.
Wow.
Yeah, right in the city, and it does it within just a few minutes.
That's kind of amazing because,
Yeah.
LA is like legendary light pollution. That's, white on the map there. But
Every city is about the same. It's anywhere near the size, it's an issue, but this technology is brand new. It has a filter built into it. It has an accelerated imager built into it. It's still technically a telescope. It's a 4-inch mirror. It's not that long. It's a very small, relatively small portable device. It doesn't require any accessories, and it works off the cell phone. This is all new stuff, and you're going to start seeing more of it as the time comes, because it allows people who are, not that versed in astronomy, not that experienced in it, to be able to participate in it really easily, and to be able to see things naked eye that you couldn't see with an optical telescope at all, even in dark skies. I mean, this thing outshines anything you can see in dark skies.
yeah, within the club, we've been talking about the future of live stacking for a while here, and how, that is the direction that everything seems to be going. That's basically the trick that the unistellar is doing under the hood, right? It's taking a series of short exposures and combining them together, right?
Accelerated stacking is what it is, yeah. Right. Because your naked eye can only see one layer of light, and this telescope can see multiple layers, and it just puts them together. You're still looking at the image in real time. The telescope has an eyepiece on it, so you're looking at it. You're still looking at the object as it is, as it would be if you were looking at through a telescope and having a long period photography exposure done on it. But it's done instantly. And without that, you can see them with a Dobsonian, my 10-inch. I can see a few things out in dark skies, but they are nowhere near as interesting when it comes to this. It's not designed for looking at the moon and planets and things like that. You're much better off with an optical telescope for that. Looking at individual star points, double stars, things like that, an optical telescope will be nicer than that, so sharper. But we're looking at faint objects, diffuse objects, nebulas and galaxies and globular clusters, things like that at distance in the city. Nothing can beat this telescope for that.
Right. Now, I know you've done a lot of outreach with the Griffith Observatory in the past. Have you had a chance to try outreach with the Unistellar yet, or is that?
Yeah,
strictly-
yeah, oh yeah, I've done outreach. As a matter of fact, we're still working with Griffiths right now with Los Angeles Astronomical Society. I've been up there 2 or 3 times in the last 2 or 3 months, and we'll be going again in the end of this month. And I bring the telescope up there, and the general public is able to look through it and see some of the objects that are available to see at this time of year. And hope to be doing it at least once a month, all year long as the weather holds out. And I've done some stuff with what's called the Unistellar community, where they basically send you I want to say missions, if you will, or things that they want us to look at, and which is very cool because I've had a chance to do that a couple times. Did an occultation for NASA and the Lucy mission. Did a near Earth asteroid track. You can do transits of exoplanets around other stars. You can do that with this telescope as well.
Yeah, we've got some images and videos to share of all that stuff pretty soon. But yeah, I just
Yeah.
want to reiterate the power of this for outreach. If you're in a setting where there's a bunch of longer focal length SCTs out there for planetary viewing, this is a great
Right.
complement to that, right? Because you can really show people the whole range of objects up there.
Absolutely. And when I go up to Griffith, I usually bring 2 telescopes. I bring this one, and I bring one of the opticals, the 5-inch, or even an ETX 90, just to look at the moon, because people still want to see the moon. It's incredible. If you've never looked at it close up, people are blown away by that. And or Jupiter or Saturn when the planets are up, and sometimes some double stars if they're available. But yeah, I bring the optical scope as well, because those things are, they're best seen and viewed through an optical telescope. It's a very different experience. So I will generally bring both the telescopes up there, and usually with some help, because it's hard to monitor both of them at the same time.
Right.
But yeah, the outreach, absolutely. It's still the majority of telescopes up there are optical telescopes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's still hard to beat the look on someone's eyes when they see Saturn for the first time through a.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. For the first time, they can't even believe it. They think it's a picture that's inside the telescope.
We get that all the time here too. Yes, absolutely. Some quick housekeeping here. If you have questions for Tim Russ, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we'll get to as many as we can toward the end. Astronomy focus is okay, but if it's got a Star Trek twist, I hope you're okay with that. Cool. Let's switch back to the slideshow here and go through some of the images you sent. Let's see if I can do this without breaking everything. Yeah, so you can see there kind of the scale of that EV scope. It's bigger than I thought, quite honestly. I thought it was a smaller device, but
yeah, it's not that big. I mean, the bottom of it, the base of it is just below my elbow there. It fits in a backpack, this telescope. The tripod obviously is a little bit larger. You'd have to carry that by hand, but the telescope itself just fits in a backpack. It's easy.
yeah, it's kind of got that sweet spot of portability, being able to take it out easily. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
just being big enough to see some good stuff still.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's take a look at some of the stuff you've seen with it. Yeah, so you want to talk us through this, Comet Neowise?
Yeah, Comet Neowise was here a few years ago. I was able to get a really good image of it. There's another comet coming by. Let's see. Today it'll be in Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, and then by the end of the month it might be visible, but I have to get up at probably 4 in the morning to see it.
Yep.
And that's the blessing of clear skies. So there's another comet here. This is Comet Neowise, and I got a good image of it. Very quick. It's a pretty bright comet. This one. It was pretty large size. So.
Yeah, Barbara Harris. I think that's the one you imaged recently, right? I think we have that in our astrophotography showcase later. So we do have some early risers in the club that are already tackling that.
Oh yeah, there you go. There you go.
It's too early for me though. And here we have M27.
Yes, Dumbbell Nebula. Yeah.
Yeah, 4 minutes. I mean, that's pretty impressive for 4 minutes. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's very quick. Very, very quick. Dark skies, it'll be even faster than that.
Right. So you actually took this within LA city limits.
Yeah, this was done in LA city limits. I look at it often because in the summertime, because it's such a great object to view. I've used it up at, I've brought it in at Griffith when we've had the star parties up there with the public. I've used that one. It's usually this one, the Ring Nebula and Galaxies I usually bring in for that.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, the other thing that I'm noting is that, the stars are nice and round there too. So I guess that's just a function of the really short exposures as combining, right? So
yeah, absolutely. You won't get the same, you're not going to get the same sharp sort of twinkle that you're going to get from an optical telescope. Nothing in this image is going to twinkle like it is in an optical scope. The stars are just there, everything's still. But in an optical telescope, you'll get the sort of twinkle of the stars.
right.
It's different the way it looks. What you're looking for is that object that's usually in the middle that's more diffuse.
Right. I mean, I don't know if they publish this information, but do you know how short the sub exposures are that it's taking under the hood?
I don't know. Yeah, that information is available. I don't. It's in the specs on the telescope.
Okay.
I don't have them right here handy, but there are specs for that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting from a technical standpoint. Just the way that they're aligning all those images in real time and
and that's
stacking them live.
Yeah, that's today.
Yeah.
That's let's see, January 2023. A year from now, it's going to be very different. So they're not stopping. They've got some new stuff that they're developing right now.
Very cool. Yeah, there's been some discussion within the club about the EV scope, so we're definitely curious about it.
Oh, they're interesting, all right.
Yeah.
The Eagle Nebula, and you can see in the center there the pillars of creation, which were imaged by the Hubble telescope. And that comes through on the EV scope. You can actually see them.
Wow. Again, from LA.
From LA, yes.
Sheesh. Yeah, that's something. I mean, I'm in a somewhat dark site here, out in an island in Florida, basically. And I don't think I could get something like that in 5 minutes with my gear. So that's pretty cool.
It just depends on, a traditional exposure takes a long time. And typically you're either going to be using some kind of filter, a light pollution filter on the scope, if you're using glass to get those images, and a very, very long exposure, multiple exposures over multiple nights. But if you're out in the sticks, it's going to be a little quicker, but you're still out there for hours. And, I can go out and look at an image 5, 6, 8, 10 things in that same amount of time, or in an hour, and then go home, so it's the difference.
And basically it's sending this image to your phone so you can download it.
And you can use whatever software you want in post to enhance the view as well. And that's what everybody who does astrophotography, I don't even have any, post After Effects stuff that I use for enhancing these things. I just use the basic stuff that came with the computer. I'm not using stuff that's really upscale and high end for doing any of the processing on these. I could, but I just don't bother with it. The images usually come off pretty well, and all I'm doing is just enhancing the contrast a little bit, maybe tweaking the color a tiny bit or the brightness, and that's about it.
Yep. Cool. Yeah, the latest processing tricks might be a good topic for a future meeting too, to come to think of it. There's been a lot of advances in that recently as well.
There's gotta be.
Is there any processing on the fly with this, like any dark subtraction?
No, what you do when you before you start imaging is you can calibrate the telescope so it will create a contrast background. So as you're doing your session, the first thing you do is calibrate the scope, and it's like a dark frame. It creates dark frames, so it'll create more contrast, and it also helps. So it helps the filter do what it has to do. So that is built into the telescope. You just do it before you start imaging. It takes about, I don't know, a minute or something like that to do it. But no processing otherwise until it goes downloaded and you put it in your system or on the phone, as it were.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's doing flat subtraction on the fly.
Yeah, you're getting a pretty raw image coming out of it.
Yeah. Cool. M8.
That's the Lagoon Nebula. And again, these, if you shoot this with astrophotography, the images in astrophotography traditionally are going to be much more brilliant in color and also in detail, because you're taking such long exposures to get those images, and everything has to be right. You can't have any of Elon Musk's satellites going through your shot. So
And that is becoming a problem.
That is becoming a problem.
Yeah. I think it's important to remind ourselves too that this is what you're going to see through the eyepiece as well, right? Like, it's not just a pretty picture on a computer screen. You can be out in the field at an outreach event, and this is what you're showing people. To to the
Yeah, they
public?
make the version of the telescope called the Equinox, which does not have the eyepiece. It's about $1,000 less
Mm.
in cost, and that goes straight to the cell phone. It's not going to be the eyepiece. I wanted the eyepiece, and so when we discussed representing the telescope, I asked for, well, I'd rather have the eyepiece version of it than
Right.
the one without it, because should people want to look through the eyepiece, that's what they want to do. It's a different experience.
Absolutely.
So I'm hoping whatever they develop from this point forward, that they always include the eyepiece. And the eyepiece is not it's not a glass, it's a screen. It's going to be an imager
Right.
that's capturing the image and showing it, projecting it to your eye. So it's very effective. And also I've gotten spoiled looking through that eyepiece, because in a regular 1.25 inch eyepiece on an optical telescope, the eye relief is not always that great, especially at high magnification. But on this eyepiece, you can stand back from it 3 or 4 inches and still see through it. It's that wide. The opening is huge. So anybody with glasses, they don't have to take them off, because it's that easy to see through it. It is really easy. I'm so glad that they actually designed it that way, rather than what it's like to look through most traditional eyepieces. You have to really got to get centered on them to get the optic in there.
Yep.
Unless it's a wide angle. It's so much bigger than the average eyepiece that, again, you can be off the telescope by that much and still see the image in there.
Right. I mean, one good thing about, traditional optical eyepieces is that you can swap them out and get different magnifications, right? So,
right.
Is there sort of a magnification dial? Can you blow up the image?
You can dial in, you can push in or push out on this image on the telescope. I think generally I don't do it. I usually leave it in the middle. So if I go to a higher magnification, it depends on the object. It may not be that much better. It may be worse because it might get a little blurry. So I don't always push in. I just use it right around the middle is usually where I keep it for this. And the lower magnification isn't that much different than the middle either, but the middle is the best. So because I've tried to push in a couple of times, not always that great.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, you're limited by the resolution of the sensor. So
that's correct. That is correct.
M22.
That's the globular clusters, M22 in Sagittarius. So that's what your groups of stars look like when they come in. And again, there's no twinkle. You're not going to get the stars twinkling in these types of telescopes. It's just they are there. But boy, they look pretty good. If you've got a good, decent contrasting background, they look great through the eyepiece. Pretty impressive. People that come up and look at them, the general public, they are absolutely amazed. Given the usual groups that we're in, most of the telescopes are optical scopes, so people can't bring these in with optical telescope. There's no way that's going to happen
Right.
in the middle of the city. So when they look through this, it's a very different thing. It's just amazing. And I had not owned a computerized telescope prior to this. I got tracking telescopes that are just equatorial tracking motors. But I didn't have a fully computerized optical telescope because I wasn't, I have friends of mine that have a couple and they were not always working properly, or parameters were not entered this way and the other thing, and I had issues with them. So I just held off on getting them until they got it a lot more together. And this telescope, by the way, when it comes to aligning itself, it does align itself. Because it works off your cell phone, it works off the cell phone's GPS. That's how it aligns itself. So it uses the cell phone's GPS. It knows exactly where you are. And all the telescope does is just looks at the field of stars, and it takes 15 seconds, maybe 10, to align itself. And it's done. So there's none of that other business either. So that's another thing about this that I was just blown away by. How easy it is just to get it set up and ready to go,
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, we spent a lot of time within the club teaching new members how to get their new telescope aligned and calibrated and get a star model going and
2-star alignment, et cetera, et cetera. Not this thing.
Yeah.
We'll go right to it.
That's huge.
Yeah, it makes a big difference.
Yeah. This next one I'm especially excited about because I know how hard this is to image even under good conditions. So
yes. Yeah. The cigar. And I could probably get a better or higher resolution image of that. I'm not sure if this one I think was in the city. If I go out to dark skies and let it go a little longer, I can get much better image of it, or a little bit better image of it. And you know, and again, I don't possess all of the particular software that has to be done, you know, in a post program, you know, imaging sort of, you know, processing software. I don't have the high end stuff that could do even more so, because you can really get down to details and pixels of that stuff, and I don't have that. So I just use what I have now, and it's fine. I think it looks pretty good. You know, again, I can get that in my backyard, literally in my backyard.
Yeah, 8 minutes in LA, that's pretty darn good.
Yeah, very simple.
Cool. And this is also a very difficult imaging target as well.
Pinwheel is very tricky. Yeah, pinwheel is very tricky. That's 7 minutes. This image, I know I can get it in my backyard. I may have gotten this in dark skies. I don't remember, but I know I can get it in my backyard pretty good as well.
Wow.
But that's a beauty. That is a beauty. These face-on galaxies are my absolute favorite.
Yeah, this particular one is kind of frustrating for me because it seems like no matter how much time I throw at it, I can't get it to look much better. It's
yeah, exactly.
You know, it just doesn't play nice with light pollution, but somehow you've punched through it there in just 7 minutes. So that's pretty cool. Some really cool stuff up next. Asteroid Nereus. Did I say that right? A little movie here too.
Nereus, yeah, absolutely. Asteroid Nereus. This is a near Earth asteroid, one of the many. And you can just, it should be a movie. I think it's yeah, there it is. That's
cool. So we're tracking the asteroid and the star field is moving behind it, right?
That's correct. It's a series of 3 exposures, 3 different exposures. And then you send the data. The telescope collects the data from your observations, and you can send it to Unistellar. They'll crunch the numbers and they'll send you back the video. That's what they do. And so, you know, when you're doing it, you're just doing 3 exposures, and you cannot see this asteroid through the eyepiece. It's too dim. This was done in my backyard also, literally in my backyard. So you cannot see the asteroid through the eyepiece because it's just too far away and it's too dim. But the telescope sees it, and over 3 40-minute, 30-minute, or 40-minute exposures, you send the data to them, and they'll send you back the video.
So how do you kick it off? Like, is there basically an alert that comes up in your app that says, here's a cool thing you can image? And
the app has all of the objects that you can look at. It has exoplanet transits. It has asteroid occultations. It has near-Earth asteroid tracks you can use. And you just go. They have all the coordinates already built in. You just simply punch on it. The telescope has the coordinates already. And it'll slew to it, lock onto it, and then you do each exposure. Reset, expose again, reset, expose again. And, you know, you don't have to stand there. You can go back in the house and watch TV, come back out and reset it again. Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. I know Barbara's going to like this next one, an occultation for, this was for the Lucy mission, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did this one just down the street because I couldn't see it from my backyard. The trees are in the way. You watch it, it'll disappear momentarily and then it'll come back in.
Yeah.
Goes out right there and comes back right here. And the light curve is down below on the bottom.
Very cool. So what we're seeing here is the asteroid occulting a star, right?
Yeah, it's crossing in front of the star. That's the star.
Right.
And the asteroid is crossing in front of it.
Right. And if I remember right, this was something the Lucy mission was soliciting for because they wanted to get more information about the size and shape of this particular asteroid for the Lucy mission.
That is correct. We were working with them. A series of us were shooting the occultation at the same time across the country, across the shadow. Shadow comes across the Earth in a very long, thin line. And it happened to come right over LA. So they asked me to do it. I was lucky to have no cloud cover that night. And they wanted to get an approximate shape of what the asteroid, you know, the shape of the asteroid itself. The Lucy mission is in progress now. All their probe is going to do is fly right by them. They're not going to stop. They're not going to orbit. They're going to fly right by these asteroids. There's a series of them. And this is one of them. This was Patroclus. So they'll fly by, they'll see it, but they wanted to get an idea of what the approximate shape was. So they had us do it. I think more than once, but yeah, there it is.
That's pretty cool. Like a one button citizen science, if you will. So
It is one button citizen science. It was a 4-minute procedure. It didn't take any time at all.
How long was your disappearance?
What's that now?
How long was the disappearance here?
That would have been that when we were doing it, the actual transit was 4 minutes long. It was 4 minutes.
Cool. All right, up next we have that video montage that you sent along, so it's kind of a fun one. Before I kick it off, is that actually your music composition in the background of this video?
No, it is not. Nope, I grabbed that from a show called The Astronomers. Used to be on years and years ago on PBS.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I wasn't going to talk over it if it was yours, so.
No. The transit, by the way, the actual transit, the actual passing in front of the star was not that long at all. It's just maybe a handful of seconds. The actual process was 4 minutes because they want you to get the star, the asteroid before it crosses, then it crosses, and then after it crosses. So the actual transit of the asteroid going in front of the star, it was only a number of seconds. It didn't take that long. Okay. It's very brief. It's as long as what the light curve, when it dips down, that was it. So it's maybe 10 seconds or less.
Yeah, let's run that again. So this is real time, basically?
This is real time, yeah.
All right, well,
so the disappearance would be, let's see, coming up here. Right there, start and finish. So that's it. That's how fast the actual transit is. Like I said, the process was 4 minutes because you have to set up, get rolling, recording before it happens, and then catch it, and then you got a little time afterwards as well.
Very cool. All right, let's kick it off with the grand finale here. Yeah. Andromeda Galaxy.
Andromeda Galaxy, yes. Yeah. It's
also a deceptively tough target. Kind of a recap of some of the earlier things we looked at. Oh, the triplet. That one's really tough to get. Very cool.
Yeah, the Trifid is beautiful. It's a beautiful nebula. Just takes some time to get it. It's not that bright. Surface brightness is not that great.
Yeah, the blue part in particular is hard to pick up on, even in good conditions. So
very hard, yeah.
But it's a very beautiful target as well. Later on tonight, we'll be looking at the Northern Trifid Nebula. So if you're sticking around for the Astrophotography Showcase, look forward to that. And yeah, if we're up for some questions here, we have quite a few that have come in. So let's plow through it. I'll turn off screen sharing so we can look at the people. All right, let's start here. John Pinto, I think we answered your question already. Have you done citizen science with your scope? For example, variable star observations? Well, we just saw that asteroid occultation. Are there some other examples you can think of?
Yeah, mostly the citizen science programs usually consist of the occultations, tracking of near-Earth asteroids, and also exoplanet transits. I have not done one of those yet. Those are going to be, 2 or 3 hour long, exposures to get those, even with the EV scope, because you have to catch it when the planet's coming across, and the light curve is going to be a lot longer because it takes longer for that transit to occur. So I just haven't done any of those yet, but those are some of the options you have under the citizen science program. There may be a few others. I haven't checked it recently, but those are basically the ones that they send you.
Cool. All right, Anthony Leone. More of a broader question here. Thank you, Mr. Russ, for joining tonight. You touched on it before, but where do you see the future for amateur astronomers? And what advice do you have for those who are starting out on this wonderful journey?
Well, save your money, because it costs you a few bucks. But what I see is that they are going to improve, and they're going to develop more, better, and hopefully the price will come down. They're expensive because of the processors. The processors obviously coming from overseas, they're very expensive. If we can start making our own here, it'd be great. But it's the processor that costs money. So what's gonna happen is they're gonna have, I think, others throwing their hat in the ring, other companies throwing their hat in the ring and developing these telescopes, because if you can, that will open up astronomy to probably twice as many people as there are doing it now, especially with the ease of use. It does not need to be any more complicated as far as the process goes. As long as they keep it basically the way it is now, it's pretty simple and straightforward. It's nothing to get this telescope set up and rolling. No accessories. Tripod telescope. That's it. You're not schlepping around a lot of gear and this, that, and the other thing. So, and it works on the cell phone. You push a few buttons, it's off to the races, it does its job, and then you go home. I mean, it's just, they're just going to improve on this over and over and over, and the competition is going to come in. So hopefully the price will come down. They're going to keep developing it. It's no different than, from iPhone 4 to iPhone 15. That's what's going on here. That's the future of everything right now. So it's not going to be any different as far as astronomy goes. They're just going to keep improving it.
Yeah, we've had a lot of discussions within the club about that as well, and we also see that as sort of the inevitable direction for this stuff. Maybe even just your cell phone is all you'll need in the future, right?
Never going to stop, man. And you're right. It may just come down to that, to being able just to use the cell phone, So
cool. All right, Mark Pernal asks, how often do you do outreach programs, and are they all at Griffith or elsewhere?
Yeah, most of them are at Griffith Observatory. We go to another place here in the Los Angeles area called Garvey Ranch. We go out there once in a while. Mount Wilson, sometimes they have people up there, but mostly it's Garvey, and also at Griffith. And there's one other place that they've gone to that's in the valley. I can't remember the name of it because I haven't actually gone to it yet, but it's usually 2 or 3 places that we have for outreach for the public to be able to come by and hang out and look through the telescopes. And I do it whenever I get a chance to, whenever I have the opportunity and whenever the skies allow me. I'll try to get out there and do it.
Cool. Yeah, I took a little astronomy vacation to LA a couple of years ago. And for anyone who hasn't been to the Mount Wilson Observatory or Griffith, do it. It's cool stuff.
Definitely do it. Yeah.
All right. Ryan asks, which is your favorite target for viewing or imaging, and why?
One of my favorite targets is the Whirlpool Galaxy, because you're seeing these 2 galaxies basically in motion. They're basically colliding with each other, and they'll eventually be cannibalized. One will cannibalize the other. So you're watching that sort of process take place. That's one of my favorites. I think also, I love the dumbbell just because of the colors I can get out of it. Also one of my favorites. And if I can catch a comet, that's even better. I love, one of the reasons that I wanted to pursue astronomy as well is because of the astronomical, events that we can get. Early on, when I had just a refractor, I think it was a 3.5-inch refractor. We had the Shoemaker-Levy 9 asteroid collision into Jupiter. And I was at Griffith Park that night with my telescope, and I could see the 2 impact points on Jupiter through the eyepiece. And I was just absolutely blown away. It was amazing. So to be able to participate in these very special events that take place, the close approach of Mars every 17 years, where you can actually see the detail on the surface through the eyepiece of a relatively small telescope, the comets that come by periodically, possible asteroid collisions in the Jupiter, those kinds of things are once in a lifetime events. So to be able to witness and observe those things with the telescope is, to have it available to when those things happen, those are very exciting. Unfortunately, last Mars close approach, we had nothing but a dust storm. So I have to wait another 17 years.
We've had nothing but clouds for the opposition out here. So yeah, I feel your pain.
God.
All right, Laura Stansel asks, have you done any outreach on the East Coast, maybe near Atlanta, for a teacher starting up an astronomy club?
Well, not as of yet, no, because that would require me traveling out there and
Yes.
parking for a while to do it. So I haven't done it anywhere outside of LA, actually. I was invited to go do a cruise for the eclipse in 2024. I don't know if I'm going to do all that or not, but you know, and I was invited to Brazil for an astronomy group down there. I don't know if I'm going to make that trip either. It's because of the distance and expense or whatever. So it depends. Most of the stuff is done here in town. Like if I can drive to it, I'm happy.
Yeah. Well, we're located just down the street from Port Canaveral. So if they bring back the Star Trek cruise here someday, maybe you can bring your scope along. We'll
Yeah, there you go.
All right. Cool. All right. Mark Pernal also asks, what size is the final EV scope image? Do you know what the resolution of it is?
I do not know the actual resolution. And somebody just mentioned it last time I was up at Griffith. My buddy has got one of them as well. He knew the resolution. I do not know the resolution that you get from it at the end. I have to look it up. All the specs are online if you want to check them out. They've got a lot of specs for the processor and also for the resolution and stuff, and the magnification as well. It's got digital magnification. So for that size telescope, if you were using an optical 4-inch mirror, you're not going to be at that focal length. You're not going to get anything near the size that you get in the eyepiece. So it has a digital magnification system built into it. Those objects are bigger than they normally would be.
Yep. Cool. All right. Steve asks, will Unistellar be developing a scope for the solar system? That's a good question.
I don't know if they're going to do one for the planets and such. I can get Uranus and I can get Neptune. I can even see one of Neptune's moons on there. I can see the moons around Uranus as well when they're not behind it. But it's not that great an image. I can do it, we can get it, but it's not that great. They're pretty, because they're bright. And so when you get in there, you have to actually turn down the exposure and the gain, which you can do manually. You have the option to, if an object is really bright, you can bring it all the way down. I've imaged Jupiter. Some other people have imaged Jupiter. Yeah, you can do it. It's still not going to be as sharp and clear as it is with the naked eye and a good sized optical telescope with a medium to high magnification eyepiece on it. It's much better to look at it that way than it is to, do it on the scope. So you typically have to turn the gain down to look at even Uranus and Neptune. You think they'd be pretty faint, but they come in pretty bright, if you really want to get some detail on it. So, and I may try and look at it again at some point in time, see if I can tweak it and get it better. They're just not that, they're just kind of fuzzy blobs with, and not that sharp. That's it. It's not designed for looking at those.
It's a cool idea for a product, though. I mean, the techniques for imaging planets are just completely different from deep sky, but there's no reason that couldn't be automated as well. So. Yeah,
and it needs the resolution needs to be, will probably improve. It needs a higher res to get even more deep detail and make the images even sharper. Once you get that going, that's probably the next thing they're working on. I mean, it's not going to be less resolution. Yeah. It's more than likely going to be more double or triple the resolution when they get through with it, because again, it's just a matter of the tech, getting the next level of tech going. They're going to do it. There's no question about it. I'll have this scope probably for maybe another year, and I'll probably have to get the next one up from here.
Cool. All right. Looks like we got 5 more questions here. Can you hang out for a little bit?
Yeah.
All right. John Pinto asks, do you have to level the scope before getting it running?
Yeah, you do have to level it. Any tracking or computerized telescope, you got to level the tripod first. Otherwise, it knows where it is, but it's all, sideways. So it has a bubble level built in. It's very simple. Put it on the ground, get the bubble centered, and off to the races.
Cool. So Sylvie Traub has a very specific question that perhaps some members of the club might be able to chime in on the chat here. But Sylvie's asking, she just joined CFAS and used to be in the Montreal Astronomer Society. Welcome, Sylvie. She's an amateur photographer. What telescope do you recommend for use with Canyon New Generation XT and a more advanced camera? I'm not personally familiar with that camera, are you?
I am not familiar with that because I was not doing astrophotography with cameras attached prior to this. I was not doing astrophotography at all. I preferred optical astronomy. That's why I'm using this telescope. I'm still interested in the optical aspect of it. So I could not tell you anything about a Canon attachment to anybody's telescope. That would be something you'd want to go online and talk to, get the information on forums about which is the best. And there's probably 8,000 pages on just that camera alone.
Yeah.
As far as getting that going. Somebody out there will know all the details about it and the do's and don'ts. And typically also for almost any computerized telescope, including this one, just as a matter of using it, you can't track anything at zenith straight up and down. Telescope doesn't like straight up and down, and it wants to be at an angle like this at least. The gears just don't work straight up and down at zenith. So
yeah, Sylvia, I'd encourage you to come along to our next in-person meeting on March 18th or to our Geneva Dark Sky Observing event next month and ask around. I'm sure some fellow members can help you out.
Absolutely.
Bill Castro, actually, I think you already answered this one. What image processing software do you use?
It's just it's the Acme version, man. It's just built into the computer. I don't really have any aftermarket third imaging software. I might look into getting some at some point in time, see what I can do with some of these images. But I almost prefer to try to minimize that and show people, what the telescope actually can do, almost naked eye. So I don't want to tweak them too much if I can avoid it. I'd like them to see, what's actually in the eyepiece if I can get it to there. So I don't do that much to them.
Cool. Good question from Ryan here. So, we've been throwing around the term citizen science without really explaining what it is. He's asking, he's never heard of the citizen science program. Can you elaborate on what that's all about?
Well, it's Unistellar is basically sort of allied with this group of citizen science as part of their package. It's something that they offer as part of the community for the people who own the Unistellar telescopes. So they all send out essentially alerts and things like that, or events, astronomical events that you can dial in on the app and actually participate in. So if it's an occultation or something like that, and the shadow of this asteroid crossing in front of the star happens to cross over where you are, they'll reach out, or you can check and see, oh, that's a good thing for you to try to image. If it's an asteroid that's visible in the northern hemisphere, oh, that's something you can try to image. If it's an exoplanet transit, here's a time where you can here's the time when the exoplanet will actually cross in front of the star. Now you can go ahead and image it. So they give you a heads up for all these things whenever they occur. And that's what it is. It's just it's a community, as you will. And they alert you to all these things that are happening. And it's part of the Unistellar sort of program.
Absolutely. And let's end on kind of a fun question with a Star Trek twist here from Douglas Woods. Douglas asks, what was the first object you viewed that you visited while aboard Voyager? Douglas, Voyager isn't real. I hate to break it to you.
Yeah, and it's also in the Delta quadrant of the galaxy.
Right.
So quite a ways away. Most of the stuff I'm looking at is a little closer. But ultimately, I don't even remember on the show which places that we went to that would have ever been visible through the scope. I'm afraid there's probably none at this point. So at this state of game, it's probably zero. Might have been cool to see something on the show that we actually went to, but some of that stuff is made up on that show, so it may not be real. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I don't remember any actual astronomical objects in the Delta quadrant.
No.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for your time, Tim, and you're certainly welcome to hang out with us if you want to, but either way, I'll be in touch to kind of wrap things up. And if you have any parting words or future projects you want to plug, please do.
Yeah, no, I think the most of what I'm starting off in January. I've got a project coming out. I'll be appearing on a show called Poker Face, which is a series with Natasha Lyonne, is the lead actress in it, and it's sort of an anthology or serial series, and it looks really good. I mean, I think the writing is excellent, and it's a cool piece, almost Hitchcock sort of drama. and things happening in it. And she's the lead character. So every episode is different. Every story is different, but she's the lead character in every story. So she's getting involved in all these crazy things that are going on, these mysteries or whatever it might be. And I'll be appearing on that coming up, I don't know, January. It's either this month or next month when the series begins, but it's called Poker Face, and it'll be out very soon. That and just the other stuff I'm working on are just some of the projects of my own that I've got that I'm developing. A sci-fi here and there is another horror project, supernatural thriller rather, that I'm developing as well with a couple of producers. So just that, the rest of it is wait and see what comes up, this year, as far as any acting work that might be coming out.
Cool. Yeah, and I think that Voyager documentary is coming out sometime soon too, isn't it?
That should be this year. They're in post. Are they in post right now? I think they're in post right now. I think that they finished shooting all the stuff that they needed just in December, January, December, November, December, I think it was. So I think they're in post, now, and it won't be until later this year that they get that finished and out. There's a lot of it. They shot a lot of material for that thing. So my hat's off to them for doing, man, the work on that was incredible.
Absolutely.
I got a chance to speak to, I did a Zoom call with one of the astronauts in the space station not long ago. That was a lot of fun. They called me about it and I was like, huh, what do you want me to do? You want me to talk to somebody? She was a Star Trek fan and she was on the space station. As a matter of fact, let me see if I can find her number. Let's see. Her name rather. I remember her name.
Christina Sam.
Yeah, Christopher. Yeah, Samantha Cristoforetti.
That's the one. Yes.
Yeah, she's a big fan, and we got on a Zoom call, and I was communicating with her in the space station, and she was floating around showing me everything that was in there, and here's this and here's that, and that was a kick in the pants. It was a lot of fun. I asked her, I said, hey, you guys have duct tape up there? Do you use duct tape? She showed me an entire tree of duct tape, just like rolls and rolls of it. She says, oh yeah, we use the stuff all the time.
If I remember right.
Mars mission without duct tape. So, and then I asked her, I said, if anybody, acts up or gets in trouble, like, do you put them in the airlock for a little while? She was a lot of fun to talk to, a lot of fun. And she showed me all over this thing, man. It was great. It was just wonderful. That conversation will be out. I think they're going to include that in the documentary for Voyager. I might be able to get a copy of it cut together with the audio from the space station so it's clearer. Before that, if I do, I'll try to post it on my Facebook page or whatever. I'll get it out there so people can see it, because I thought that was a kick in the pants to be able to do that in real time. It was very cool. Yeah.
That's amazing. If I remember right, she smuggled a Voyager uniform up there and actually wore it at one point. So there are pictures if you look on the interwebs. So.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's
awesome.
Well, there you go. There you go. Right.
Yeah. All right. We'll keep an eye out for Poker Face.
Poker Face. Yes. Yeah. I don't remember. I think it's episode 7 or 8, somewhere in there. So it's about 8 episodes in. Really good story too, by the way. Good episode. Nick Nolte stars in that episode as well.
Very cool.
It's really very cool. Very cool story. Very interesting work on it. So yeah, it was fun. So be looking out for that. Yeah.
All right. Well, again, thanks for your time. And if you want to hang out, you can. But otherwise, what do we say as Vulcans? Live long and prosper. Yeah, I don't know.
Long and prosper.
All right. Cool.
Thank you very much for having me. Take care, guys.
Thanks so much. Bye.
All right. Bye bye.
Let's head back to our screen share here. Yeah, that was fun. All right, let's kick it back to our club president, Tricia, if you want to introduce our next speaker.
Thanks again for getting Tim, Frank. That was pretty stellar, if I say so myself. That was quite the presentation. Thanks again. And thank you again, Tim, who looks like he's left already. Next up, we have CFIS member SHARIFE, who is going to be talking about the science of Artemis.
Yep, and I'll stop sharing.
SHARIFE. All right. It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
What? You're not even a participant. You're a panelist for darn.
I know.
Hang on. I'm going to make you a co-host. That should do the job.
Okay. Cool. Let's see. Awesome. All right. So I'm going to share this. Cool. Let me make this down here. All right. So can you guys see my screen?
We are seeing there we go. Yep.
Perfect. Awesome. So I'm going to be talking about Artemis, a little bit about who I am. So CFIS member, previous publicity chair, and also NASA JPL Solar System Ambassador. So I know there are a couple Solar System Ambassadors in CFIS, but for those of you that are not familiar with the program, I'm going to go through it real quick and just kind of give you an overview of what the program is, and then let's talk about Artemis. So the Solar System Ambassador program is a volunteer program, and we're basically an outreach program. We go out into the community and kind of talk about NASA's missions, the science that's on that NASA is involved in and a part of, and kind of do this sort of thing. So the applications are open every September of every year. So anybody is invited to apply. There's some stipulations and stuff, but if you're interested in applying, kind of doing this sort of thing, definitely check it out. So I can either put my email in the chat later on at the end or whatever. And if you have any questions, you can use the Q&A and I will do my best to answer them at the very end. So with that said, this picture is a picture of Artemis, of the Artemis mission and the SLS rocket. And this was during the rollout, the second rollout that was there. So as you can see, there's Jupiter underneath the O in the cosmic conversations, and then the moon is in the distance. All right, so we're going to talk about Artemis. A little bit about the mission overview, not too much, but kind of give you guys an update on what things are on the rocket and on the mission, and then talk about a little bit about the spacecraft and then the science that's on board. There's a lot of really cool science that haven't really heard a whole lot about, so I think it's important to talk about. So this was my picture of the launch. We were able to see it from just across the causeway from Kennedy Space Center, and it was interesting because where I was at, we didn't hear the sound as what I heard a lot of other people on the other side of on kind of like the east side heard it, and it was incredible, and the sound was incredible, but it wasn't what I was expecting. However, if you look at the picture, you can kind of see a little shockwave sort of thing of the water coming, the rippling just before the sound showed up, which was something I had never seen. So that was very cool. All right, so Artemis, for those that aren't familiar, the twin sister of Apollo and the goddess of the moon in Greek mythology. So the overview of one of the main goals, the objectives of the Artemis mission is to land the first woman and the first person of color on the moon, and then aim to go to the moon and beyond. So there are a few mission objectives of the Artemis mission, and I'm going to go through them real quick. But some of them, the first one is equality. So that's to aim for NASA to land, as I said, the first woman and the first person of color on the lunar surface. Some differences between Apollo and Artemis. Apollo had a crew of 3. Artemis has a crew of 4. We'll have a crew of 4. The first Artemis mission 1 was uncrewed by living humans, but we'll get to that in a second. So another mission objective for Artemis is a technology. So taking where the Apollo missions left off with that part of it, and then advancing the technology in a lot of different ways. So being able to update some of the spacecraft technology, and also the spacesuits and everything go along with that. On the right-hand side, you'll see a little graphic novel of First Woman. Definitely check it out. If it's free for everybody, you can download it. Just if you go to nasa.gov, you could probably type in First Woman. And it's a story of Kaylee, who is it's a graphic novel of hers. And so it's a lot of fun to look at, and you can print it out or whatever. So yeah. So another one of the mission objectives for Artemis is partnerships. There's a whole lot of different kinds of partnerships. There's SpaceX, there's commercial, different commercial and privatized partnerships. There's international partnerships. There's different kinds of government partnerships, all different kinds of partnerships that are making this program become a reality. So this is kind of a really cool illustration that I found where it shows all the different parts, all the different moving parts of what the Artemis program will entail. So everything from the human landing system to the rovers, to Gateway, which we'll talk about in a second, and then to the Mars habitats that will be in the future at some point. So another one of the mission objectives is long-term presence, where the Apollo 17 crew spent about 3 days on the lunar surface. The Artemis crew plans to extend longer than that. So we want to be able to spend either weeks or possibly months on the lunar surface. And so Apollo was self-sustained. Where Artemis is planning to go is to integrate not only what is taken up into space, but then have the human landing system, gateway, and then a base camp on the moon. That's kind of the projection of where they want that to go. So it's going to depend a lot on lunar gateway. So you might have heard that phrase kind of thrown around. What lunar gateway is going to be, it's going to be similar to the International Space Station in some ways, in that it's going to be on orbit around the moon. It's going to be kind of, I've heard it described as a 7-Eleven pit stop sort of thing, where the rockets will launch from Earth to gateway, be able to resupply, do all the resupplying everything that they would need for that, and then be able to then go to the moon. And so what it would save would be being able to have to take your tools, for example, every single time to space. They're already waiting on orbit. And so that's currently dependent on the Artemis Accords, which are being talked about right now as far as who has the rights to what. And that would be a different presentation, different conversation. But yeah, so let's see. Oops. So another one of the mission objectives is knowledge. So learning more about where we left off, taking the technology that we left off and then learning more about maybe the volatiles that are on the moon. And I'll talk about that and some of the science it's going to figure that out. All right, another one of the resources is figuring out water, where water is, how water is showing up on the surface of the moon. Is it ice? Is it liquid? Where is it? Right now, they've talked about having the landing sites for the Artemis-I mission being on the South Pole, and there have been high levels of volatiles and water basically on the South Pole. So this is going to take a look at some of that. All righty, so about the rocket, I kind of brushed through all that real quick, but about the rocket itself is the SLS. It stands for Space Launch System. And that would be the orange thing with the 2 white boosters. That would be the rocket part. And then on top is the Orion spacecraft. So what's important about this is that the SLS is the world's most powerful rocket as of right now. And it's the only exploration class vehicle that can send humans into deep space, along with the systems that would be necessary to live and work. The background of this image is one that I took at liftoff of the Artemis-I launch, and you see the rocket and is a little dot on the left. It's not something on your screen that you might want to scratch off, and then the moon on the right. And so I just thought this was kind of neat because it was nowhere near the moon, but it was neat to see it kind of at that angle. All right, so how big is this thing? Some of you might have seen it either in the rollout or you've seen it on the launch pad. If you went out to the Space Center and looked at the Apollo Saturn V building, you were able to see it out in Launch Pad 39B before liftoff. One of the cool things about it was picked to go to the NASA social for Crew 5, and I noticed there was another fellow NASA social attendee there in the audience now. But anyway, we were able to go into the VAB, the Vehicle Assembly Building, to actually see this thing during one of the rollouts. Before it was rolled back out, it was in the VAB. So they took us up to the 16th floor of the VAB, which was like ridiculous, and to see this thing. So the only stipulation was that we couldn't show the door that was, it's not pictured obviously, but there was a door behind the light in this picture. So as long as we didn't show that, we could take pictures. So there you go. I was able to take that picture. How big is this thing? This was taken from the 16th floor. It's 322 feet tall. If you imagine 3/4 as tall as pyramids of Giza, okay? Weighs 5.74 million pounds. That's 40 times the weight of the space shuttle. Or if you use blue whales as scale, whatever, you can do that. The thrust, 8.8 million pounds. So if you took all the train engines in the United States and fired them up at once, that's how powerful this thing is. And reaches speeds of about 22,670 miles an hour. I have Greyhounds. If you take 5 of those Greyhounds, it's 500 times as fast as those Greyhounds. So that's pretty fast. All righty. So for scale, kind of hard to see this image, but for scale, what this is showing kind of in perspective of the shuttle, the SLS rocket, the Saturn V, and then also the Statue of Liberty, just for size comparison, and noticing some of the differences of the rocket. In the middle, you'll see the core stage, which was the new part of it, of the SLS that was developed. And that was part, a couple years ago, I think I had presented, or we talked about the green run. And that was kind of the testing phase for the core stage of the SLS rocket. So the SRBs, the solid rocket boosters, the white parts on the side. So those would be kind of similar technology to the space shuttle. So you take all these different parts with some of the spacecraft, the Orion spacecraft, which was kind of modified from the capsule from Apollo, put them all together and you get this thing. You mount it onto the mobile launcher, which was the scaffolding All that was assembled inside the vehicle assembly building and then rolled out onto the launch pad. So this is a picture from the rollout, and I was standing on the back of like a truck bed in a pickup truck just for scale. And then that's the VAB. So you can see the little people down there and how big this thing is. All right, so if you take the rocket, break it apart into its little parts, you can see all the different parts of the rocket. This is a very cool little wormhole if you're ever interested in kind of learning more about the different parts. Everything from the launch abort system and to the RL or the RS-25 engines, everything and a little bit more about them. You can kind of see how there's even collaboration and partnerships within this. You have Lockheed and Boeing and Teledyne, Northrop Grumman, all coming together to make this thing possible. So some differences of the Saturn V and the SLS. Proof I was there, a little selfie. And I'm covering the door, of course. So the Saturn V used kerosene and liquid oxygen as fuel. The SLS uses cryogenic hydrogen and liquid oxygen as fuel. On the left is a close-up. They had a couple solid rocket boosters across the way as models, is what we were told. They're the real thing. They were just using them as kind of in case they needed to reference it for anything. So it was neat to be able to see some close-ups of that. Some of the repurposed parts from the space shuttle, some of the repurposed technology would be the solid rocket booster segments. Also the main engines, the RS-25 engines, and then the design of the external fuel tank. So you might notice behind me, I don't know if you can see my little caption, my thumbnail. Behind me, I have the space shuttle. The orange looks similar to the SLS at some point. So it was postponed a few times. So the first one was postponed because of the hydrogen leak. And that would be where the fuel hose connected to the rocket itself. Sometimes if it's not a perfectly sealed thing, there might be even like little microscopic holes or anything like that. If you're trying to fill it with liquid oxygen and hydrogen in a rocket and then light it up, that's a bad day. So you want to make sure that the leaks are all good, they're all taken care of. Then it was postponed again with Hurricane Ian, had to be rolled back, as you might remember, and then rolled back out to Launch Pad 39B. Hurricane Nicole came, postponed, didn't get rolled back. And then finally, when it was going to be launched, there was an issue with, like, you might remember, like the red team. So what that was is a flight termination system error. Something was happening with that, and that's part of the launch abort system. If anything happened with the rocket, it would have kind of an automatic detonation device that's built in for the safety of everyone that might be, on land and stuff. And so that was not working. So what they had to go back was just make sure that it was, so that they could lift it off, launch it, and everything would be safe. So they got it, and it was launched. Take off the launch abort system, which I will show you there in a second. And underneath you have the Orion spacecraft. So the top looks familiar. The silver part looks similar to the Apollo capsules, a little bit bigger. And underneath that, you have the solar panels. And then underneath that, where it looks kind of like a cone with its part chopped off, that's where the CubeSats and the science is on board. There's also some science in the spacecraft part. So on the left, you can see the NASA meatball, the ESA logo, partnerships again, and the launch abort system mounted on top. On the right-hand side, you can see where there are a bunch of different cameras that were on the Orion capsule. So all these cameras were there to take pictures of it. And there's also a really cool camera, which I'll get to in a second, that was able to document a lot more stuff. So what's important about this is the heat shield. The heat shield had to be way bigger than it had been before, because it had to withstand temperatures of 4,900 degrees Fahrenheit upon re-entry into the atmosphere. So if you're interested in looking at the crew module would be where everything, the Orion spacecraft and everything kind of separated. You see the fairings coming apart, where the CubeSats would be all the way to the left. So this was designed to hold 4 astronauts for about 21 days if it had to, and then ferry them to the moon and from the moon to and from the moon. So it's about 30% more cubic volume space than the Apollo capsule. So a lot more legroom, not really, but bigger. So how do you get this thing, this behemoth, from the VAB to the launch pad? You put it on the crawler, and it travels at a just really fast pace of 0.8 miles an hour. Now, you might have heard it that the crawler can travel up to 1 mile an hour. That's with the space shuttle. This thing is much bigger, and so it goes a lot slower. In the picture here, you can see the truck. There's a water truck in front of it. the water truck would kind of wet the asphalt, the rocks, the river rocks that were in front of the mobile launcher to make sure that none of the dust comes back up and then goes into the crawler and into the spacecraft, because that would not be a good thing. So goes out to the launch pad on this. The mobile launcher or the crawler transporter can hold up to 9,000 tons. Up on the right, you can see what it looked like for the space shuttle. And then on the right bottom, you could see where it was modified a bit to hold the SLS. If you can look real close on the bottom left, you see little me, and I'm kneeling next to one of the tracks. So there are 8 tracks in groups of 2, 4 sets of 2 each. And so there's 8 total. This thing can hold up to 6.6 million pounds. That's a lot. Really cool thing. Could talk about it at another point if anyone's interested. So this is a picture. Let's see. How can I get this? There we go. Time lapse of the SLS headed out from the VAB to the launch pad. This is about a 30-minute video, just for perspective, and it was very cool to see that. So this thing finally lifts off on November 16th at 1:47 a.m. from Launch Complex 39B. And on the bottom left, you can see Charlie Blackwell Thompson, and I had to put a picture of her in there. First female launch director for NASA's Exploration Ground Systems Program. So what is that? Ground Systems Program, you take the science, you take the Orion spacecraft, you take the mobile launcher, you take the SLS, you take the VAB, you take everything and you put them together. This is the team that's responsible for integrating everything. Thousands of people working on this. You want to make sure that everyone's talking to everybody. I just saw on Artemis's Instagram just a little bit ago that the ground exploration team had started unpacking the capsule, the spacecraft part, and they had taken the Snoopy gravity indicator off today, and then they were going to start to look at some of the payloads. So this is a trajectory map of what the Artemis-I mission did. A little bit, basically, this is what it did. If you want to look at it, a little bit more time and kind of dissect a little bit more, again, go on nasa.gov. You can type in Artemis-I trajectory, and it's a pretty neat thing to kind of just follow it along. The Artemis-I trajectory will look a little bit different than the 2 and the 3. The Artemis-I purpose of this was to see that this rocket could fly, and making sure that it could go around the moon and that some of the basic systems of the rocket, the machinery, were working. Artemis-II will send the first crewed, will be the first crewed mission of Artemis, and then they will orbit. They're not going to land on the moon. Artemis-III, they will. That's at least what's projected. Like I said, a little bit different trajectory, but very cool stuff. So what's on board? This is what it looked like for Artemis-I. For Artemis-II and for 3, the crewed missions, it'll look a little bit different. But on board, there were 3 analog little test dummies. So Commander Munikin Campos, and he was named after one of the engineers for the Apollo 13 missions, the one that put, if you guys remember the movie or real life, the one that kind of problem solved the leak. They dedicated this to him. And so also on board were 2 other little test dummies, Helga and Zohar, and they were wearing radiation vests as a test. So this is kind of the part of the organic portion, part of it, to see what would happen with radiation once they actually send the crews up. And this is what this looked like. On the bottom left, you see Commander Munikin Campos. He also has a graphic novel, I believe, and all about his story. And they had different springs and different measurements and everything on the seat and in the capsule for him to be able to test, what's it going to be like when they actually send people up. And so they'll be looking at the data for that. Top right, you see Commander Munikin Campos, and then the 2 dummies on the bottom that are going to be wore the radiation vests. And it's a collaboration, again, with NASA DLR, which is the German space agency, and ISA, which is the Israeli space agency. On the right-hand side on the bottom, you can see kind of the lady holding it looks like a foam mattress, and another one of the NASA socials in Wallops was able to hold this thing, and it weighs a ton, which is interesting. It's like really thick, just the padding that it has, and then that's going to be developed into a vest, which the astronauts will ideally be wearing underneath their flight suits and spacesuits. So, yeah. So, what else is on board in the capsule itself? this is Callisto. And so Callisto is a space version of House Robot. So I'm not going to say her name because she's going to talk to me. So ALEXA. And basically what the astronauts will be able to do is order Prime delivery. Now, they'll be able to web conference, they'll be able to access ALEXA and Amazon and Cisco. And it's a partnership, again, with these companies to then be able to provide video conferencing with less interruption and be able to live stream from Orion. So it's kind of taking what they have now to the next step. And this is what it will kind of look like. This is a kind of a mock-up of what it is. So yeah, so going a little bit further into the CubeSat. So that was look inside the Orion capsule. I'm sure there was a ton of other stuff in there, but the CubeSats that are in it were in the Orion stage adapter. So underneath the Orion capsule, there's a ring that's in there, a white ring, which you can see in the middle picture. And if you look in the inside of the middle ring, kind of where the lime green color is, see these little cubes, these little cubbies that are in there. Shoebox size satellites and experiments are tucked inside. So what they do is that when the spacecraft reaches its particular orbit, when it gets to where it's going, the shoebox size little cubbies open up, and then the satellites are deployed, or the experiments are deployed to do their science. So this is where the CubeSats all come in. 10 of them on the Artemis-I mission, and we're going to go through some of them. So with all that said, the first one, in no particular order of importance, BioSentinel. And so this one is the only biological one that was actually sent on this mission. It's going to be using yeast for testing radiation. So the yeast that was sent up was Saccharomyces cerevisiae, if anyone is interested. And so the objective is to understand radiation for crew health. So another way, this is a big thing, a big concern for crew. They're going to be using the DNA from the yeast, and because it's similar in many ways to human DNA. And so the way that the DNA will repair any mutations in yeast is similar to humans. So in the bottom left, you can see these little vials, these little samples, and half of them, there's 16 wells in each of these little plates that were located in the CubeSat. 8 of them are the wild type strain, so that's going to be the control of the yeast. And then 8 of them already have a mutation built in. It's the RAD51 deletion that has been deleted, to mutated, to see how they will be able to repair themselves in space. So with reconstituting the samples, once they get to where they're going, then there will be sensors that can look at the results and then report that back to Earth. The whole mission will take about 6 to 12 months, and then all of the science will be able to be reported back. On the right-hand side, you can see the CubeSat with all the little plates kind of loaded in, and then the solar panels that are extended out. This was at an Artemis event at Kennedy also. Yeah, so the next one is NEA Scout. This is Near Earth Asteroid Scout. It's going to be looking for asteroids that could be a threat, could be a concern, maybe not a threat, but a concern for Earth. So they're asteroids that are not big enough to be detected from Earth, but they're big enough that it might be something to look out for. So what NEA Scout is doing, it's going to be setting its sights. It's going to be going to asteroid 2020 GE. That's the target. And then it'll be extending a solar sail. Top left picture, you can see how tiny this thing is in proportion to once the solar sail is extended. Bottom left, that's what it looks like. So the solar sail is about 925 square feet in around. So that's how big this thing is. And on the bottom right, you can see where it is in scale in proportion to the CubeSat. There's a little X right in the middle. That's the CubeSat, and then with the solar sail deployed. The solar sail, or this particular CubeSat, the NEA Scout, will be traveling. It'll be arriving at asteroid 2020 GE in September of 2023, I believe that's the date. And it's going to pass along with it. That's the point where it's going to be closest to Earth. So by close, I mean 5.7 million kilometers. So not really close, but yeah, close enough. So that one's pretty neat. It has a camera on board. The only instrument that's on board. It's going to be taking a lot of pictures of the asteroid, and not only just when it passes through Earth, but also continuing to take it. The polymer sail is similar to what's on Webb. It's an aluminized polymer sail. So yeah, that's a cool one. These 3 I put together because they're all working in collaboration with one another. So they're going to be looking for ice and for water on the moon. So Luna H map, it's going to be measuring the abundance of hydrogen down to 1 meter below the lunar surface pole. So it's going to be producing kind of a hydrogen map. If they look at the results of it, it'll just be kind of looking at where there is hydrogen deposits to create a neutron map of hydrogen on that. So it's going to be traveling about 5 to 10 kilometers above the surface and then orbiting around the moon, looking at that. And you have Lunar Ice Cube, which is going to be doing a similar thing, except that's going to be looking for ice, basically in the name. And so the catchphrase for Luna Ice is "follow the water." That's their catchphrase, and this will be orbiting the moon at about 100 kilometers above the surface, and it's going to be looking for ice. So you have these two. You have liquid water, you have ice water, and then you have the third one, which is Loon IR. Both Ice Cube and Loon IR use the instruments are infrared, and so they collect the data through infrared technology. Loon IR is going to be looking for thermal emissions and then reflected sunlight. So any sunlight that is coming, if it's reflected, then it would be picking up on that. It's going to be operating through colloidal thrusters. That's how it's going to be moving. All these together is going to be able to provide a really cool picture, hopefully, of what the hydrogen and water situation is on the moon, which then, as I said, could be used for supporting life, for turning into fuel, for providing protection against radiation, for insulating different surfaces. So all these things together is going to be an important thing. All right, so we got next one is CUSP. Most of these, or many of these, I've seen have 6 CubeSats built into each CubeSat. So this one has it has 3 different instruments that are on board, and those are the science payloads that are on there. It's going to be looking at space weather, basically looking at orbiting the sun, looking at space weather, looking at anything that could then affect Earth and then the moon, and looking at that. However, it lost radio communication at about 57 minutes into its mission. So it successfully was able to go on, was deployed. The solar panels were able to be deployed, and then it lost communication about 57 minutes in. So no word back from them. I'm guessing that the scientists, the labs that are responsible for them probably know what's up, but I don't. So next one is Team Miles. All right, so this is a citizen science, that word again, a citizen science project CubeSat. So this is the first citizen science CubeSat that will be part of the Artemis missions. And so this is the catchphrase for this one is "the space belongs to everyone." So what this one is going to be doing, it's testing the thrusting maneuvers using water as the thruster. Bottom right, you can kind of see it in its lab doing its thing and testing. So it was able to meet with some of the scientists that were developing this, and it was very, very cool. Just talking to them, being excited about it, and about citizen science. Where you can be a part of that. And so, as an aside, want to be kind of participating in like a citizen science project with growing space flown seeds to then grow space flown tomatoes from their seeds. So it will be, and updating everyone with how that goes, but doing some citizen science with that and providing results and data and everything. But yeah, so this was a citizen science CubeSat that is from a nonprofit group in Tampa. All right, and then we have Aquarius. Aquarius is one of 2 of the JAXA, so Japanese Space Agency CubeSats. And this is going to be looking at any radiation and meteorites that would be a threat or would be of concern for the moon and for any of the missions. It uses an instrument called CLOTH, that's the acronym. And what it's going to be doing is measuring meteorites and micrometeorites that would be important with spacecraft and with any technology, potentially any habitability modules, any spacesuits, anything that might be a concern. Where, every once in a while, you might hear of the International Space Station kind of being dinged by a micrometeorite or something. This is going to help to kind of get a clearer picture on what's out there. So. All right, so the second of the 2 Japanese of the JAXA CubeSats is Omotenashi, and this was the smallest lunar lander that has been sent to the moon, which is kind of neat. This is a test of the landing technique. So they sent it to see what it would happen, had a bunch of different sensors. It's kind of like they bubble wrapped it and did this, not actually bubble wrap, but they bubble wrapped it and deployed airbags and everything to test and see what would happen when they land on the lunar surface. So remember on the cameras, I mentioned earlier, the cameras that were able to take pictures of Orion and of the spacecraft and the really cool selfies and everything, you could thank Argo Moon for that. So Argo Moon was the official photographer of the mission. It was developed by the Italian Space Agency. And what it did was it was the first CubeSat that was released from the mission, deployed, did orbits around the Orion spacecraft, got a really cool picture, literally and figuratively, as to what was going on, making sure that some of the equipment and some of the technology that had never been flown was able to survive and do well, and they got a good picture of that. It also took some really cool selfies and some really neat images, which you might notice this. So this was taken by Argo Moon. You might have seen this. This was actually a screenshot from the webcast that I took, so it's not that clear of a picture, but some of these other ones too that you might be familiar with. You have some of the onboard cameras and Argo Moon to thank for that. So after all that, Orion returned to Earth at about 25,000 miles an hour. No big deal, right? That's where the heat shield would come in handy. Imagine traveling from LA to New York in about 6 minutes. That's how fast this thing is going. And it splashed down in the Pacific Ocean on December 11th, and it was in space for 25 and a half days. So far, everything looked good. That's everything I've heard, that everything worked out well. So the ground exploration team would be unpacking everything and looking at the data that was collected to then take it from there for Artemis-II and Artemis-III. Picture on the left is a picture of the spacecraft for Artemis-II. I believe this picture was in Kennedy. I didn't take this picture in Kennedy Space Center currently. And so it's projected to lift off in 2024. Again, that likely will change. And then Artemis-III, that'll be sending and landing the first crew back onto the moon. So this is a picture in Germany where they're installing some of the hardware into the spacecraft. And so this is projected to launch in 2025. Again, the date will change. But yeah, so I thought those were pretty neat. So at the end of everything, I want to end with Carl Sagan quote and, pale blue dot. Look again at that dot. That's here. That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. Yeah, Carl Sagan said that. All right, so that's what I got, and I'm going to stop sharing. See a few questions.
Thank you for that, Sharifa. Looks like we got
Awesome.
2 questions and 1 comment. So the first question is from John Pinto.
Mhm.
He writes, not sure this is part of the Artemis mission, but other scientists have speculated that there might be fossilized early Earth life on the moon, which was ejected into space when meteors crash into Earth. Have you heard anything about this?
I haven't heard anything concrete, but I have heard that. And so kind of as the collision would have happened, it would have either been integrated or something into that. And so part of with this and also with Mars, I've seen with some of the volcanic tunnels and some of the tunnels, even specifically on Mars, that they would be maybe looking for some of that and going underground to look for that. Be pretty cool if they found stuff, maybe learn a little bit about the Earth's past and then also what else might be out there. So, yeah.
I agree. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Laura Stansel has a comment. She said, hey, lady, I agree. It was cool. It took my breath away. Nice comment.
She was she was in the crew 5 the social. So
oh, okay. Another solar system ambassador?
No, one of the other social media NASA social people.
Oh, the NASA social girls. Okay.
Yeah.
Our next question is from Anthony Leone or Leone. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. He says, thank you, Sharifa, for giving us a wonderful rundown of the Artemis mission and launch. I covered it for Spectrum News 13. I'm a digital news editor. It seemed like you experienced more than I did. Besides the launch, I was at the press site and it looked like a small sun going up in the sky. What was a memorable moment or what impressed you most about?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it was like daylight when it launched. And I think the thing that impressed me the most was actually seeing the ripple of the water ahead of it. I've never seen that in any other launch, and I've seen quite a few. And so it was daylight. You see that, with the Falcon Heavies, you see it kind of brighten up. This was like something out of this world. But the ripple of the water, it was weird. It was just really cool to see the power of this thing. Even though where we were standing, the sound didn't match what I had expected, although I know it did for a lot of people. Just seeing the water ripple ahead of it was just that it was a powerful rocket. So that was very cool. Yeah.
I agree. It was pretty cool. I was over watching it from the space bar over
Okay.
across the pond.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Rifa. That looks like
Awesome.
it for our questions. Do you have anything to plug or anything coming up that's exciting? You want to share?
I have a few other events that are coming up, just like outreaches. So some ambassador like SSA events. I have one at the Maitland Public Library coming up on February 22nd. I believe I can let the club know and stuff. We're going to take the scopes out, talk about the night sky. Also, a couple other things that I can, get ironed out and share with the club and stuff if anyone's wanting to join. If you're interested in more information about the SSA program, I can actually put my email somewhere if you don't already have it. So people can reach out. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Rifa.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
it.
Awesome.
Okay, so we're going to transition now to Barbara Harris, who is going to be talking about the variable star of the month. Take it over, Barbara.
Hi, everyone. Get my screen shared. I'm going to be talking about the variable star of the month and hoping that this is going to be a regular or semi-regular mini program. So I'd just like to spend just a few minutes on presenting a different variable star every month. And the one I'm going to talk about this month is called CN Leo. So just to remind everyone, variable stars are stars that change their brightness over a period of time. And that period of time can be over a few minutes, or it could be months or weeks or even years before you see the brightness change. And this change in brightness can be due to something happening inside the star, which is called an intrinsic variable star, or something going on outside of the star, which is called an extrinsic variable star. And the one I'm talking about tonight, CN Leo, is actually an intrinsic variable star. There's something actually going on inside the star that's causing it to change its brightness. So CN Leo is what's called an eruptive red dwarf variable star. And the reason that it's variable is that it displays flare activity. So just like we have solar flares, there are stellar flares. And this particular star actually experiences pretty regular stellar flares. It can change, the brightness can change over 6 magnitudes from its baseline. In the optical region, you usually won't see a 6 magnitude change. It's more like 2 or 2.5 mags. That big 6 magnitude changes in the UV part of the spectrum that is most dramatic. It is a relatively close star to the Earth at a distance of 7.9 light years, and it has been found to have 2 exoplanets orbiting it. And its baseline magnitude is pretty faint, so you would need a pretty good telescope to actually see the star because its baseline magnitude is 13.6 mag. And on the left here, you can see where it's located in the constellation.
Excuse me, Barbara. I don't think we're seeing your screen here.
Oh, okay. Let's go back.
Should be a green share screen. There we go.
Yeah. Okay. So let's
we're
get
seeing
back to where I am.
We're seeing the presenter view, but oh, there we go. Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So this is where it's located in the constellation here. Regulus, there's the nebula. And like I said, it's very faint, 13.6 magnitude. So it's not something you'll see naked eye or with a pair of binoculars. And one of the reasons that I chose this star to talk about tonight is because of our guest star. It's going to be related to the Star Trek universe. But anyway, a brief rundown on what a flare star is. Like I said, it's just like a solar flare. It's a flare on a particular star that has been documented at least once. Most flare stars don't have a regularity to them, and it's difficult for them it's difficult to detect because you can't determine when it's going to happen. But the flares are basically the same mechanism that happens on the sun, where you get entanglement and reorganization of magnetic field lines that sometimes lead to a large explosion on the surface of the star. And like I said, the timing of these are unpredictable. So if you've noticed that it's flared once, you have to just monitor it on a regular basis to see if and when it flares again. The last detected flare was last year, March 20th of 2022. Prior to that, it was November of 2009. And it doesn't mean that it hasn't flared in that interval between 2022 and 2009. It's just that those were the times that it was observed flaring. It may have flared and not been observed at the time that it flared. So like I said, I wanted to talk about this star because of our guest star. Besides C and Leo, this star is also called Wolf 359. And if you are a big trekker, you will realize that Wolf 359 is famous in the Star Trek universe because it's the location of the battle with the Borg in the Star Trek Next Generation two-part episode, The Best of Both Worlds. So even though Star Trek is a fictional universe, there are several stars that they talk about in Star Trek that actually are real stars. And this is one that actually is one of my regular observed stars trying to catch a flare. My last observation of it was December 28th when it was about 13.6 magnitude. So thank you for this. If you want to know more about variable stars, visit aavso.org. You can find out about variable stars in general, or you could look at a particular variable star, and there's over 100 years of data on some of these variable stars. So you could look at activity over a certain period of time.
Thank you, Barbara, for that.
Okay.
And I appreciate the Star Trek tie-in. That was pretty cool.
I know. I figured
you.
because of that, I would do this for at least a Star Trek star. Like I said, there are a lot of stars out there that are actually real stars that Star Trek talks about.
Well, it was perfect for tonight's meeting. I really appreciate it. And I must commend you on your slide templates. Very beautiful. Very beautiful. That last slide, the thank you slide, that could be a background on a desktop. That was beautiful. Thank you so much. And it looks like we have, John Pinto said, thanks, Barbara. We have one more question on Artemis from Sylvie Traub for Sharifa, who has joined us again. Thank you for coming back. Sylvie asks, Artemis looks a lot like Saturn. Since the space shuttles were retired, it seems we are going back to the Apollo type of shuttles, but more powerful. Is it because the space shuttles were not as powerful technologically?
So both of those are true. If you look at what the space shuttle was for, it was a shuttle from Earth to the International Space Station to take the science to build it, to go back and forth, where Artemis, the SLS rocket, would be a lot more powerful because it's going to the moon and then beyond is the idea. So if you look at kind of the space shuttle as a pickup truck, is what I've heard it described as, taking the stuff, the equipment, to the ISS, to low Earth orbit, and very different purposes. And so you would need a much more powerful rocket, which is where the SLS comes from. They're taking kind of a bit from the Apollo type rockets and capsules, similar to what you pointed out, and then a bit of the shuttle, and then create this new thing. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for that.
Yeah,
Appreciate
sure.
it. Okay, so I'm going to hand it back over to our Vice President, Frank Kane, and we are going to get started with member astrophotos. Take it away,
Indeed.
Frank.
We have quite a few submissions this month, so thank you for everyone who sent in your photos. And just a reminder, even though it says Astro Photo Showcase, we also welcome your sketches. So if you're more of a visual observing guy and you're sketching down what you see at the eyepiece, send those in too. They're more than welcome. So the way this is going to work is if you are present, I'm going to allow you to take the virtual microphone. You'll have to push a little button on Zoom here to accept it. And if you want to talk about your image in your own words, you're certainly welcome to do so. Sharifa, you're first.
I am. It's a picture of the Wolf Moon from last Friday. Just thought it was really neat. We went out to Campbell Rogers State Park up in Flagler Beach, watching the Moonrise event. They have a monthly event every month to look at the full moon coming up over the ocean, and it just the boat was just perfectly positioned. It was fantastic. So yeah, that's a picture I took with my Sony Alpha 6000 400mm lens, like it's on there, and that's basically it. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, we had like the same view, but with a different fishing boat where we were that same night. So it was pretty weird, but it was a beautiful night.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. All right, up next, we got John Pinto. Let me find you in the list here. We got a lot of people here tonight, so bear with me while I find people in the UI here. Okay, John.
Frank, can you hear me?
Yep, there you go.
All right, so this is Moonrise at Sunrise. I live in Avalon Park, and this was a beautiful composition with the red horizon from the sunrise, and then the nice bright white moon just above the retention pond in our backyard, and framed by the beautiful live oak trees that grow around everywhere. There's no filters on this; it's pretty raw. But the idea was to show you that you can get beautiful astrophotos just with your phone now. That was really what the concept was for this. Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, it's really amazing how well that's tracking there. It's like the moon's a perfect circle there, and my Samsung can't do that. I'll tell you that right now. Up next, Richard. Let me unblock you. It's a really sharp picture of the moon.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Yes, this is the Aristarchus Plateau. The really bright crater kind of to the right of center is the crater Aristarchus. It is the youngest large crater on the moon and the brightest feature on the moon because it's so new. And then that square-shaped region is the Aristarchus Plateau. Took this with Skywatcher Matt Cassegrain 180, no teleextender, just the native focal length, and a Player One Neptune 2C camera. I actually framed this up and then I rotated the camera a bit. I'm often encouraged to take photos with north up, but I twisted this around because I like the view. I feel like I'm flying over the moon, over this very interesting region of the moon, and I really like the craters in the background along the limb on the edge there. I was really pleased with how the sun was hitting the moon that night, so I twisted the camera just to get a better framing that I enjoyed.
Yeah, gorgeous shot as usual. And speaking of the sense of flying over the moon, this next image kind of takes it to the next level, in my opinion.
Yes, I actually took this the night in December 7th, that Mars and the moon had their close encounter for us and was occulted for our friends out west. I didn't send any pictures of the moon and Mars because I figured everybody shot the moon and Mars and you'd probably have a bunch of them. But the moon was full that night, and I also had the same Player One Neptune camera and the same Matt Cassegrain telescope, but this is with a 4x power mate. So it's a very long, no, a 2x power mate, sorry. So just a little shy of 4,000 millimeters focal length. And this is upside down, also rotated. I didn't rotate the camera, I just rotated the image for this. But this is sort of near the south pole of the moon. So this is it looks like you're flying over the moon because you're literally looking at a kind of a grazing line of sight along the bottom of the moon, and you can see, the ridges, really prominently standing out, and it's a view of the moon you don't normally get. A lot of astrophotographers, swear at the full moon, but the full moon has some interesting features if you look for them. And somebody also took me to task about the coloring, accused me of false coloring this image. This is pretty much the natural color of the moon. I did push the saturation a bit. When you take a raw camera image, I've got an article somewhere online where I took a photo of a parrot at the zoo and I stripped out all of the processing that even like Photoshop RAW shows you. If you don't do anything to that image, it's rather flat. So you always push the saturation a little bit. So that's a perfectly valid thing to do with an astro camera. And so I pushed the saturation. I didn't overdo it too much, but I actually like this coloring of the terrain, and you do feel like I'm looking out a window. So I liked it, and I did it for me. So there.
Yeah, I mean, it's real information, right? I mean, that really is, different mineral deposits on the moon and whatnot, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So.
The moon is so bright. We often we have it's a very bright target, and so it can get bleached out very, very easily.
Yep. Yeah, I saw that comment on Facebook, and I thought about taking him to task, but I figured don't feed the troll. So
I responded politely and explained it to him, and he responded. He's like, "Oh, thanks for the explanation, friend. Great image." So I think it was all fine.
All right, cool.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, great image. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Christopher Hunt's got a few. Let me turn on your microphone here. No, I think I got you.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So I finally saved up enough money to buy a camera. I got a ZWO 678 planetary camera, and these are my first attempts at photos. So I just wanted to share them. And this was done, the Horsehead Nebula, of course, and this was done with a 66 millimeter apochromatic refractor, and about 10 images at 30 seconds each. And I really like the results, and I'm hooked on astrophotography now. And if you go to the next one, I think it's probably my better image. I did the Orion Nebula, and this is pretty much the same. It was a 66 millimeter refractor with 20 10-second shots, and I really like the way that came out. It was just nice. So really just getting into astrophotography, and just saved up enough money to get a telescope and to buy a camera, and this is kind of the first season that I'm using it.
Excellent. Yes, it's definitely an addiction. So
yeah. And
yeah,
then, the next shot that we have was I'm sure a lot of people have that. That was just before I got the camera. I used my iPhone, just smashed up against the eyepiece, and captured this image of Mars and the moon. I'm sure a lot of people have that, and I love the size and the scale of that. It looked really good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and the next image I got, well, this was my cat. I had my iPhone, and I turned around, and I guess he was just curious as to what I was doing, and that's not a posed picture. That's actually him looking through the eyepiece, and so he was looking at the moon there. And the next one, this image a little bit blown out, but every time I look at this, it looks like the cat on the moon, and it looks like a little bit like a cat face to me.
Cool. Yeah, and just to go back quickly, I just want to point out that these are relatively short exposures here that you did here. So that's basically 5 minutes total, right? And
yeah,
3 minutes or so. So not all that different from what Tim Russ was doing there, but you're doing it a little bit more control because you have individual components to play with.
Yeah, that's all using the ASI Air,
Right.
which has been amazing. Just something new in our hobby, and it's really easy to use.
Yep. But just a good point that there's more than one way to do it. So,
Yeah.
all right, thank you. I got a few of my own up next. So got a clear night, couple of clear nights last month. NGC 2841 is a rather obscure galaxy in Ursa Major, if I remember right. Relatively small, it's 42 million light years away. So not a whole lot of people image this thing, but I think it's cool just because of all the other galaxies in the background. So if you look closely, there's a very wide variety of distant galaxies of different shapes and sizes and orientations. And views like this just always really hammer it home just how big the universe is and how varied it is. So I dig that stuff. Details are on the right for those that are curious. Also took a stab at the Northern Trifid Nebula. So just like the regular Trifid Nebula has sort of a emissive red component and a reflective blue component, there's also a northern version of this called the Northern Trifid, which is harder to capture, as you can definitely see here. But I gave it my best under light polluted skies. Out here, it's about Bortle 5. So this is about as good as I could get it. This is a combined RGB image with hydrogen alpha enhancing it. So that kind of gave it a reddish hue that I'm not entirely pleased with. So I still have some things to learn on processing there. And finally, I did get one more clear night for the Silver Sliver Galaxy. Again, this is a wider field image where the real star of the show, I think, are all the other galaxies in the background. And it's just a reminder that you look at any random point in the sky and there's so much out there. I mean, every one of those galaxies has potentially 1 trillion stars in it and maybe 1 trillion worlds, right? So really mind-blowing, humbling stuff. And to me, that's what astronomy is all about. Hand it off to Mark Pernell. Let me unblock your microphone.
Okay, can you hear me?
Why, yes.
Ah, great. Okay, this was taken actually about a week ago. Like Chris, I've only been at this for about a year, doing, I would say, more, call it serious stuff. Yeah, I'm still got a ways to go, but bottom line is I'm not out for an APOD or anything like that. I'm just out to have fun and see, when you look up in the night sky, especially with all of our light pollution, the way it's been lately, you look and you can only see so much, but it's great to break out the telescope and see what is really out there deeply, especially when you toss on a camera or you can do long exposures. So this was about a week ago, M33, which we all know is the Triangulum Galaxy, which is about 3 million light years away, which happens to be the 3rd largest galaxy in the local group after the Andromeda and the Milky Way. So right there, you're looking at about galaxy is about 50 light years in diameter. It's about half the size of the Milky Way. So that pretty much sums that up. So that's about an hour-and-a-half exposure. I actually tried to get some more last night, about another hour-and-a-half to get a total combination of 3. But unfortunately, imaging last night, I was shooting too much into, my neighbors have all these lovely security lights out. So the image just kind of didn't turn out the way I wanted to with all the mercury, a combination of mercury and sodium vapor lamps. So,
yeah. And this is a deceptively difficult target too. You would think being so large and so close, it would be, really easy to capture, but it's very diffuse. It's not a bright galaxy by any means. So
correct. I don't know if the surface brightness is on that, but correct.
Can you look at the picture he took?
Pardon me?
Yeah.
Somebody say something?
Just someone's background noise, I think.
Oh, oh, that's true. Because actually, when I did an additional hour-and-a-half last night and then stacked the full 3 hours, it really did not bring it up that much. But of course, really to increase the detail and stuff would probably take about, well, you figure 1.5 hours, I'd probably have to go another 3 hours to put on top of that 1.5. So, but still, from Central Florida to light polluted skies, close to Orlando and Sanford, I'm not going to complain. I'm having fun. I'm having fun.
No, it's great. And seeing any spiral structure in this galaxy is an accomplishment. So, yeah, absolutely. And I got another one from you.
Okay, this one was about, I remember about a month or so ago, The folks over at the Kennedy Space Center, Amateur Astronomy Group, they have their star party once a month now, and they let all us folks at CFIS know that, hey, if you want to come out on such a night. So this is my attempt at the Pleiades. M45, 2.5 hour exposure. The thing I like about it, if you look at it, it looks like a face. So it looks like you got two eyes. It looks like there's a tubular structure coming from the center to about 4 o'clock, and then it looks like a goatee. And I just kind of like how that turned out. It was so interesting. So it's almost like the okay, it's the Seven Sisters, but it's almost like the man in the sky.
Yeah, it's amazing how some objects take on a totally different character once you do a deep exposure.
Correct. And that's everything there you see. That's there's no filter or anything because all that is reflection nebula. It's not H2 or anything, or HA, I mean.
Yeah.
Okay. About a month ago, I ordered a planetary camera because I thought, okay, Jupiter and Mars are looking great right now. But realized I shoot with refractors. My largest one is 6-inch. The other one's a 4.5. I don't have the focal length really to get any detail on the planets. So I said, well, you know what? Let's give this thing a shot on the moon and see how we do. So, like Richard said, if it's a full moon, doesn't mean that you have to call it a night and ignore it. So if you notice, we had 95% illumination on that. And still, I think I got a halfway decent shot.
Absolutely.
And this is just my favorite time to shoot the moon. When it's in first quarter, you start getting that beautiful detail and that almost all that texture along the terminator. And this goes to show that you don't have to go out and buy an expensive astro cooled camera if you got a telescope. I'm shooting with a 10-year-old Sony DSLR on this one, and just goes to show if you got something old laying around doesn't mean it's got to still collect dust. And it's a full frame camera, which really full frame is my favorite thing to shoot with. So
very cool. Thank you, Mark. And as a reminder to the members, Mark Pernell is one of our board members at large. So if you as a member have any issues you want to bring to the board of directors, he is one of your points of contact. So thank you for your service.
Thank you.
All right. Barbara Harris, if you want to unmute.
Okay, this is a quick image of the comet that's out there, Comet C2022 E3. If you look at a planetarium program, this was shot on January 7th. A planetarium program, I think Sky Safari was saying that it was 7.5, 7.6 magnitude. But I actually did photometry on the coma of the comet, and I got a magnitude of 10.56. So it's a little bit fainter than what they're predicting now. But as it gets closer to Earth, it may become a lot brighter. Tomorrow is actually perihelion, where it's closest to the sun, and February 1st is when it's closest to the Earth. So February 1st, it might get a lot brighter. I also took photometry images this morning, but I haven't measured them yet. So as of the 7th, it was only 10.56 magnitude. And this image was taken with a QHY 247 color camera with an 80mm refractor. And it's only 3 2-minute images that are stacked, aligned on the coma of the comet.
Got it. Yeah, I was going to ask about the exposure time. So I noticed the stars aren't very streaked, but that stacking explains it.
Yeah, and they're stacked with aligning with the coma, so
right.
Stars are going to be streaked.
Excellent. Thank you.
And this is, most of you know, most of my photometry, most of my astrophotography is scientific. So I actually did this waiting for one of my variable stars in Corona Borealis to rise high enough. And if you want to go out and see the comet, it rises at around 1 o'clock. But you want to get it a little bit higher. Like I usually want to get it above 30 degrees altitude for photometry. So that's going to be around 4:30 in the morning.
Right. Cool. Actually, we got a question that came in for you from Eric Hoyne. Hi, Eric. Eric asks, are you still year-by-year imaging Bernard star? Yeah.
Yes. I usually do it around June every year. So 2022 was my last one. And it's somewhere on my Facebook page. I usually post an image every year.
Yeah, I always look forward to that. Eric also says your previous imaging on that has been incredible, and I agree. So thank you.
That's one of my fun projects.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. All right, last but not least, Douglas Woods. Let me unmute you and tell us about this cool shot.
Well, this was the first Falcon 9 return to launch site image at night that I was able to successfully capture. In the past, I've been thwarted by scrubs, bad weather. Well, those are pretty much the two major issues I have. One thing you might notice if you look where the second stage lit up, you can actually very faintly make out the loopback burn of the booster rocket.
Yep.
And then, of course, you see the reentry burn and the final landing burn. And there's also another, I guess it was a plane off on the right side. Didn't notice that. But in any case, I always enjoy going out to do launch photography. And at this time, it's what I'm pretty much restricted to while my Orion telescope is in the telescope hospital.
Oh, no.
Well, I actually called them today. They hadn't done anything with it yet.
Man.
Hopefully I'll hear some good news soon.
I hope so. Meanwhile, there's a Falcon Heavy launch slated for Saturday night, is there not? So triple the fun on that.
Yeah, the booster, it looks like it just says at sea, which is not what they usually say when it's going to be landing on one of the barges. So I'm guessing, even though this is a new core and hasn't been used previously, they're going to deep six it.
But the side boosters are coming back, right?
Pardon me?
Are the side boosters coming back?
Yes, they will both be landing at landing zone 1 and 2.
Okay, cool. That'll be a good show. All right.
Lighting
should be good for that too. So right after sunset.
Cool. About that, it's usually not too good for any, certainly not like this, which was over 8 minutes exposure. And every time I've tried to fake it with a neutral density filter in the past, it's kind of come out, well, looking like velvet. But I'll do a little experimenting beforehand and see if I can fool it this time.
Yeah, I would hope for some pretty dramatic space jellyfish, as they say. So we'll see what transpires.
That'll be my main focus.
Yeah.
But I have 2 camera bodies, and what the heck? I'm out there for 3 or 4 hours at any rate. I might as well play around with it.
Cool. Yeah, definitely a fun place to live here. All right, thank you, Douglas. And with that, we're pretty much done. I do have a quick note here from John Pinto that I want to address before I hand it back to Tricia. John wants to remind everybody that there will be an occultation of Mars on the night of January 30th, around 12:30 a.m. on the 31st. Also a close conjunction of Venus and Saturn on the nights of January 22nd and 23rd, with the crescent moon on the 23rd. So some astronomical action there. And we hope to get back to John's updates of what's up in the night sky soon too. So cool. And also we'll see you next month. And the February meeting will be virtual as well. Second Wednesday of the month again, same time, same place. We have confirmed for our speaker next month, Shane Larson will be returning, and he's a professor of physics and astronomy at Northwestern. He'll be giving a talk about stars, their life and death, and all about stars. So it should be fun. And with that, I'll hand it back to our club president, Tricia, for any closing remarks.
Thank you, Frank. I want to thank everybody who presented tonight and who participated, who submitted astro photos. Really appreciate all of your hard work and effort. This was an excellent show, and I, for one, will be sending out the YouTube link to many people. So again, thank you so much for coming, and I look forward to seeing you guys next month, as well as in March at our next in-person, our first for 2023. So thank you so much again, and have a good night, guys. Take care.